I want to take you on a little journey around the UK Games Expo, around the little indie publishers and the weird and wonderful games they were showcasing. It's a little trip through the UK TTRPG scene that you might not otherwise hear about. I'll start with things you might have heard of, and we'll get progressively more weird and obscure, so settle in. We'll start at the Mythworks stand, where Felix Isaacs was signing copies of his games. Pico is finally out for all you fans of little guys. I'm guessing this is probably the least hidden gem we'll find, but if you're not aware, it's about the adventures of bugs in a post-apocalyptic future where the humans have gone. It's designed by the creator of the Wildsea and uses the same Wild Words engine. And of course, gets the super high quality treatment of Mythworks, with really fun, dynamic and vibrant artwork. My copy came with an extra drawing of a bee by Felix, aged 38. Loads of people wanted to see a review of this, and I'm sure I'll get to it at some point. The book itself is a review copy, and I bought the Picodex to go along with it. It's just a fun little expansion with cordyceps infected bugs, crustaceans and frog folks, as well as some stickers and postcards. And mine came with a not so little guy giraffe in it. Moving over to the Three Sails stall, these are the folks you might recognise from Mappa Mundi. I felt like there was a lot of hype around their new game, Gallows Corner, in the UK indie scene, so I've got this low on the obscurity meter, but I'm guessing there's a good chance you're not aware of it. This is a very new release from Three Sails, and while Mappa Mundi is a pretty chill, low-violence game about studying magical creatures and monsters, Gallows Corner is a lot less chill. It's about a peasant's revolt in medieval Britain rising up against a cruel feudal system. This is actually a review copy that Three Sails sent me after the event, partly because the stock they had at UKGE was selling really well. And very quickly, the other big thing that was going on at Three Sails was Nathan Blades showing off something I'm massively excited about: City of Espers, a punky urban fantasy game crowdfunding in September. I imagine you'll hear me talk about this one quite a bit later. Crossed Paths had a small stall and a street named after them. Unfortunately, Draconim isn't fully ready yet, so I didn't get to see that, but I did get a text-complete version of Legends of Akaroth to look through. And what they were really pushing were their pocket editions of Bramble Trek and Covens of Midnight. I think I'm most curious about Covens of Midnight and how it compares to another game in a similar space that I keep meaning to try out, Tangled Blessings. Both dark academia, magic school, tarot-based journaling games. So I'm happy Ash gave me a press copy of these, and he also talked to me for quite some time about community. We talked about the very dedicated Crossed Paths fandom, who seem to have a strong feeling of investment in the games because of how the design and testing process involves them. And we also talked about the close-knit indie design community, about Ash's support of Breathless Frightmare Edition that I mentioned in my Firelights video, and his aspirations to create a more formal system of support for indie designers. This is in the context of the already very close UK indie scene, with organisations like the UK Tabletop Industry Network, who are there providing stall space for all the folks who might not otherwise be able to sell their games at the event. And that was just lovely to see. Now let's head over to SoulMuppet Publishing, and another game you might be familiar with, not as new as the previous two, but one that a few folks have requested a review of, Orbital Blues. It's a lo-fi space western game along the lines of Cowboy Bebop and Firefly, and one reason I got it was to try out the Wanderer solo supplement. I bought the base game, and the lovely folks at SoulMuppet gave me the Wanderer and a couple of bits and pieces to go with it. You might notice this is a bit of a theme already. It costs a lot to purchase all the games I'd like to feature, so I'm really grateful for the review copies I was offered, but also felt a bit guilty about it because I can't cover everything, so I tried to buy extras when it made sense. And I think now is the time to dive into some much more obscure stuff, because while I was at SoulMuppet's stall, I talked a lot to Mole, who designed some of SoulMuppet's weirder items, like the kitchen nightmares inspired serving up disaster, and this strange little thing I'm actually quite excited to try out, When the Walls Fall. It's a world-building game where you roll and stack dice until they topple, and how they fall tells you something about the collapse of your city. It looks really cool. Now let's take a trip to Anime Land, where I was so happy to find Animon Story at the expo, a Digimon-inspired creature tamer, and something that gets recommended to me quite a bit. Animon Story was sharing a space with Break, and it was really great to see the collaboration going on here. I bought the core game, and they gave me something I didn't know existed, a crossover adventure between Animon Story and Break called Breakpoint. It's written by the designer of Break, Reynaldo Mandriñán, using the Animon Story rules, and from what I heard, there's a second crossover adventure planned, going the other way, using the Break rules. The digital version of Breakpoint is actually available for free on the Animon Story website if you're curious, and they also gave me these really fun Animon creature cards, which is just perfect for the theme really. All the way from Australia, I found Storybrewers Roleplaying. Now, a little project I set for myself going into the convention was to see what sports drama RPGs I could find. I'm not a huge sports fan myself, but I think it's a relatively unexplored genre at the table, and actually quite well suited for role-playing games. And for me, Fight with Spirit was the absolute highlight of that search. I'm so grateful to Storybrewers for giving this to me as a review copy because it's such a great looking boxed game. It's designed to take you through a 6 to 8 session tournament in whatever sport you like, from something you're already a fan of like rugby or basketball, to whatever you can imagine like hyperorbital deathball or something. And you'll explore your inter-team relationships and face rivals and all that cool stuff. I'm massively looking forward to trying this one out. And something else I picked up there was this very cool game in their Little Box RPGs collection, Decaying Orbit. Instead of a book, the Little Box RPGs are actually a deck of cards in a box. I think this kind of packaged game is a bit of a trend in the scene recently, and honestly there's no particular reason why I picked Decaying Orbit to buy over the other three. They all looked very cool, but this one's a story game about a failed space station falling into a star. The onboard AI has to figure out what terrible things are happening here before sending its final transmission. In Hall 4, there was a row of a fair few RPG folks you might have heard of, including Dungeons and Dyslexia, where I stopped for a chat and we were joined by Juan of Odd Artworks. There's probably a fair overlap between our viewerships. Juan does relaxing top-down videos of himself creating dungeons and other TTRPG related artwork, but he also makes games. And one of the more recent ones is the solo game Dread Night, where you play as a kind of undead revenant, a zombie, a ghost, a vampire, or a werewolf, and it's full of Juan's amazing comic-style visual art. I had a digital version, but I'm really happy I found and bought the physical book, because I don't think you can actually get this outside of conventions yet, which bumps it up on the obscurity score. Going back to my little quest for sports drama RPGs, I found the Biscuit Fund stall with a game called Tournament Arc. It looks really fun, very magenta, which I appreciate. and a similar sports anime vibe to Fight with Spirit, where it can be about any weird and wonderful sport you like. I'll admit to not being quite as enthusiastic about Tournament Arc, but that's only because it uses the belonging outside belonging system, and my only experience of that system didn't really grab me. But I want to give it a fair go, so I bought a bundle of the core game plus the 5 expansion zines, which add support for more specific kinds of sports, like Combo Breaker for martial arts, or Raid Finder for esports and MMOs. That definitely raised my enthusiasm level. Fistful of Crits is probably more well known for the upcoming Tobean's magical cat cafe setting for Daggerheart. That's definitely something I'm looking forward to, and I actually bought the preview Ashcan edition while I was there. But they also do other games, like Swanheart, a comedy romantasy duet game about the Swan, a paladin with a sacred duty, and the Heart, someone who might distract them from that duty. But the designer Steph gave me a copy of Swanheart Alone Together, a solo version for playing alone. And now that I write that, I wonder if there's some implication there. Anyway, I'm looking forward to trying it out and investigating possessed goats or whatever you do in this game. Something I wanted while I was at UKGE was to pick up a Wretched and Alone game to try out. There was of course the original Wretched, but that's not obscure enough at this point in the video. There were a couple of other options I spotted though, and in the end I went to Patchwork Fez's stall, where Sarah was showing off a very pretty London Underground adventure with these amazing homemade mosaics. And there I picked up Lie to Him, by friend of the channel Michelle Kelly, a game where you lie until your tower collapses and your story falls apart. I'd say it's Wretched and Alone, but technically it's a standing ovation game. There's a lineage from Lie to Him through Pirouette to The Wretched. Anyway, it actually comes with an app to simulate the block tower and track the mechanics. I played with the app a bit already, but honestly, I realised an issue I'm going to have with the game, which is that if you've ever been the victim of gaslighting abuse, it might be a tough play. That's no indictment of the game, of course. That's a personal thing. In a little corner of the show, near Animon Story and Odd Artworks, I found Shrimp Fried Dice, maybe better known as FinleyJinley. I want to massively shout out Finley for putting together a solo RPG catalogue, a really thoroughly researched list of all the solo games you might find at UKGE, and something I really should have made more use of. But it's still up on itch and still well worth looking through. And at Finley's stall is where I found one of these really obscure games deep in the design community that I mentioned in a recent review that used the Guided by Firelight system. This is The Final Days of Maccabee Haze, a solo game about exploring a ghost town, inspired by creepy video games like Everybody's Gone to the Rapture and Silent Hill. It comes as a set of 2 high-quality trifolds, one with the rules and one with tables for generating the town. This is a very recent game, not even on the Guided by Firelight's list on itch yet. I don't think you can get the physical version yet, but the digital version is just $3 with plenty of community copies available, so just go and get it. This might be the most obscure game in terms of reach that I found, but there was one that was weirder than all of these. The game at the top of this list for pure weird factor comes from Anna Blackwell of Apothecaria and For Small Creatures Such as We fame. I met Anna showcasing their very odd Golf Quest. Perhaps not exactly the kind of sports story game I was looking for, but it's certainly something. It's a comedy dexterity game about a fantasy golf tournament where you flick a pencil across the page, leaving a mark on the paper to show the path your ball took. I have absolutely no idea if people will be interested in me covering something like this, but according to Anna, it sells much better in person at conventions than it does online, and I kind of get that. You kind of need to see it in action and go, fun. Coincidentally, someone already requested a review of this game, so it'll at least go into the next audience pick poll. Now, I do want to quickly swoop past some other stalls and folks it was great to see at the event. Federico Sons had come all the way from Argentina with Zephyr, one of my highlights of last year, and nearby, presumably in the anarchist autonomous zone of the halls, was Stop, Drop and Roll with Why We Fight, one of my favourite solo games. I also met Sam Armstrong, who was there with the sad Dead Pirates game Tales from the Spectral Sea, which was apparently quite popular and something I've yet to try. There was Nick Angel showing off the new Colossal card game, but this is an RPG channel, so I only picked up the 2 Colossal expansions I didn't have yet. And let's award Doomsong for going all out with their stall, with priests and an actual coffin. And then finally, the people, for whatever reason I didn't get to, despite a good 7 hours spent trying to find everyone on the Friday. I was so exhausted after all that, but I do regret not visiting folks like Rowan, Rook and Deckard, whose games look like something I'd probably enjoy. And one final mention, Leyline Press were there with Salvage Union, but by pure chance, sitting at a gaming table on Friday evening, nursing a sore back and trying not to fall asleep, I found myself in a playtest of their upcoming game, Achaean, run by the designer Pani. Achaean is a dark, Greek mythology-inspired Morkborg hack. It feels so authentic and well-researched, with lots of little touches of flavour in the items and abilities. I'll be honest and say it's not my kind of thing personally. There's a lot of blood and sacrifice for my tastes, but I do think if you're a fan of Greek mythology and enjoy an over-the-top splatterfest, like a much better researched 300, then you might look forward to this game. My character died doing what he loved, being pulled into a fiery pit by some grotesque failed experiments before exploding and taking another party member with him. So if that's the kind of experience you might enjoy, keep an eye out for Achaean. I'll be making another slightly more serious video about some of the more investigative research I've been doing around UKGE, and hopefully that'll be ready soon, and hopefully won't get me blacklisted, but I guess we'll see. In the meantime, Matt Risby over at The Bad Spot and Ada, Darcy and Michelle of Euphoria both made great reviews of the event already, so please do check them out for a balanced look at the positives and negatives of the event. And of course, a massive, massive thank you to all the supporters on Patreon and Ko-fi who really did make this video possible. Thank you so much. And until next time, happy adventures.